Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you so much for having us. We are a group of 4 master degree students from Jana from France over here, Teresa and Chris from Germany. I'm Julius, also coming from Germany, and we are part of a trinational program of European studies between Poland, France and Germany, and we had the chance to spend the last semester, the last winter term in Opole in Poland, and hence also were there for the Polish parliamentary elections that took place. And we want to talk about those today and also a bit about the implications for Polish democracy and the EU relations. Those elections were considered to be a major turning point in the democratic backsliding of the country, or also in trying to diminish that a bit. I would like to start about with some key facts, some Polish, some basics about Poland, and then also talk about what happened before the elections, about the last 8 years. Then Johannes is going to talk about the electoral campaign, parties and candidates, before Teresa will say something about the election results and the formation of government process. And in the end, Chris will tell us about a bit about the aftermath of the election. I think there are some people from Poland here as well, so feel free to interrupt whenever there's something that is a bit odd or if you notice a problem. About the key facts that I just announced. The Republic of Poland was implemented in 1989 after the People's Republic of Poland and the Soviet influence on the country came to an end. The constitution then was adopted in 1997, and it constitutes a system of a semi-presidential representative democracy. Poland has approximately 38.5 million inhabitants, making it the 8th place in Europe population-wise. And in 2023, the GDP per capita was 19.84 thousand euros, and that makes it ranks it on the 24th place in the European Union. Then to have a bit more background about the institutions, the executive part, when it comes to separation of powers, is formed by the president, who is elected in a direct elections for a term of 5 years, serving as a head of state. Then the prime minister is named by the president and confirmed by the lower chamber, and the ministers are suggested by the prime minister. For the legislative, there are 2 chambers. So it's a bicameral parliament consisting of the lower chamber, the so-called Sejm, and the Senate, that is a single seat constituent, voted by a single seats constituency, while the Sejm is voted on by proportional representation vote. They are both elected for 4 years, and those are the elections that we are focusing on in 2023. The judiciary realm, there is a constitutional tribunal that is responsible to oversee that legislation is in line with the constitution, and it's consisting of 15 judges that are elected by the Sejm for 9 years. And then there's also the Supreme Court, which is the court of last resort in Poland. Now I would like to say a bit about the timeline that was relevant leading up to the election of last year, so a bit of background as I announced. On May 1st in 2004, Poland joined the European Union, so that's almost to the day 20 years from now. All the more reason to maybe have a look at what's going on there. And there has in the beginning been a promising role of Poland within Europe, and it was a really pro-European country. 72% were in favor of membership, and then in 2014, Donald Tusk, the prime minister, then became president of the European Council, and in 2015, the right-wing PAS, Law and Justice government, was in charge. First by electing in May 2015 Andrzej Duda from the party as a president, and then in October of that same year, the party also won a majority of seats in both chambers. In 2019 for the parliament and 2020 for the president, those wins were repeated. And since the beginning, from the Law and Justice government, there had been concerns about judicial independence and freedom of media when it comes to the Law and Justice government. And for the presentation now, I'm going to focus on two subjects, mostly media law and separation of powers, while there's definitely more to unpack concerning also human rights, but I want to talk about some major systemic changes. So for the media, in December 2015, so really in the beginning of that government, the Broadcasting Act amendment was passed that was trying to put the Ministry of Treasury in full charge of appointing supervisory boards and boards of public media, which was questioned by the Constitutional Tribunal, and nevertheless, eventually, the media authority who was entrusted to guard public interest in radio and television was sidelined by effectively changing appointment procedures, requirements, and the number of boards. And then later on in June 2016, the National Media Council Act established the National Media Council as an office that was to take over the competencies mentioned above of appointing the boards and even controlling the Polish press agency. And this created a double structure with the media authority that I already mentioned. And those National Media Council members were also appointed by the Sejm and by the president, adding to the influence of the Law and Justice government. All of that shows that the national broadcasting was basically taken over by the Law and Justice government, with critical voices in the media landscape becoming extremely seldom. And from 2015 to 2016, there is a drop from rank 18 to rank 47 of Poland in the freedom of press index by Reporters Without Borders. Then maybe another major event to mention in 2020. The PIS claimed the repolonization of media that was before in the last decades often owned by international companies, and this also turned to state control in 2020. The state-owned oil company Orlen bought shares of Polska Press, creating a monopoly in regional newspapers. And so those are a few of the major turning points undermining the freedom of press. Then looking at the judiciary, in 2015, the president, Duda, did not greenlight some of the judges that the former government had appointed. And instead, the new government later selected other judges for the Constitutional Tribunal. That was in December 2016. So that, bear with me here, it's a bit more detailed, but it's just to show one example of how that was really doing something not in line with the Constitution. So after the retirement of the president of the Constitutional Tribunal, President Duda appointed an acting president of the tribunal, a position that did not really exist. And this acting president was then elected president of the Constitutional Tribunal without the necessary quorum, and among others by judges who were themselves just appointed on no legal basis. And by that practice, you may have heard about that already, mostly also from the US. That is called court packing. They circumvented the possibility for the Constitutional Tribunal to really work in that controlling capacity that it needs to. And ever since, the question occurs if the Constitutional Tribunal can really still be considered a court. Then in 2017, there were more reforms in the judiciary with the legislative powers, claiming more power over the Supreme Court by reducing the retirement age of Supreme Court judges from 70 to 65 years, which basically just forced some of the judges to retire early. And there was also a disciplinary chamber established that allowed the government to get rid of inconvenient judges. In December 2019, a law was passed then in Poland that allowed to investigate and sanction judges, effectively undermining any judiciary independence that was left. That was called the Muzzle Act. Muzzle being what you're putting on dogs so they don't bite. I learned that word, so hope that helps. And then in October 2021, the Polish Constitutional Court ruled that European-level claims were not compatible with the Polish constitution, basically stating that the national constitution was superior to EU law. So those are some of the important points when it comes to undermining the rule of law. I already mentioned Europe here. When it comes to the EU response, I just want to not to go too much in depth, but there had been several warnings across the years from the EU towards Poland. The European Commission issued the so-called rule of law recommendation starting in 2016, which remained unheard in Poland. And then in December 2017, the European Commission called upon what has been described as the nuclear option, so something really intense, the Article 7 of the Treaty on European Union that is stripping member states from certain rights. And the Commission was arguing that the judicial independence was undermined by the executive powers, as I showed you, stating that there had been a clear risk of a serious breach of EU values, of rule of law, independence of judiciary, and separation of powers. So, with also the Commission later additionally bringing several cases in front of the European Court of Justice, which then ruled against Poland, which in turn disrespected most of the rulings, which then led to fines being imposed, most prominent one being in 2021 in October, 1 million euros per day that Poland has to pay as a fine, which has since been, I think, halved, but still quite intense. So intense relationship to the European Union leading up to the election campaign in 2023, which Jana is going to tell you more about now.
Okay. So, as my colleague said, it's in this context that the 2023 Polish elections are held, and between actually two parties, the PiS and the Civic Coalition. So first of all, the PiS party, which we must know as the Law and Justice Party, they have for the candidate the actual Prime Minister, Mateusz Morawiecki. However, let's not forget the one who has the most influence in the party, in the PiS party, and are considered sometimes as a de facto leader of Poland, Jarosław Kaczyński, and is also one of the founders of the PiS party and is known for his position against the LGBTQ+ right and being Eurosceptic. So no surprise, the party follows his ideology. But who are the PiS party? The PiS party, during its 8 years in office, has pursued a policy that combines social redistribution and conservatism. It implanted a near-total ban on abortion and employed an anti-LGBTQ+ rhetoric. They are also engaged in anti-German rhetoric, with the leader of the PiS party, Jarosław Kaczyński, kind of foster by saying, I quote, "The Germans look down on us," or that Poland must not develop a Stockholm syndrome towards Germany. They are also known for disrespecting the rule of law and the independence of the judges. The Peace Party is supported mostly by the middle-sized or small cities in the countryside. On the contrary, the Civic Coalition is supported in the biggest city of Poland. So now we're going to see who is the Civic Coalition. The Civic Coalition is a party of the opposition led by Donald Tusk. It stands as the pro-European Central Liberal Party, and it's composed of multiple centrist parties. It was first organized around three parties, Modern, the Greens, and Polish Initiative in 2018 for the Polish local election. It's a party that is founded on the economic liberalism. They support the voluntary termination of pregnancy and defend the institution of a civil partnership between two people of the same sex. They also want to restore the relationship of Poland with the EU and are severely opposed of the decision taken by the Peace Party concerning the judicial power. So now we're going to see what issues shape the Poland 2023 election. The first point concerns the security of Poland, notably after the beginning of the war in Ukraine. Peace leaders promised to build a strong army in order to protect Poland against a potential attack of the Belarusian or Russian. The second point will concern the relationship of Poland with the EU. As we said, peace undermines the rule of law and creating a conflict with Brussels. They are more into an isolationist stance and capitalizing on the anti-German rhetoric, but in contrast, the Civic Coalition positioned as a firmly pro-European and saw the European Union as the best way to guarantee the security and prosperity, and wants to respect the rule of law in order to release billions of funds of the EU. The third point will concern the Ukraine itself, but actually both of the parties are in favor of supporting Ukraine, but one of the problems is for the peace. It's concerning the product of Ukraine that are imported in Poland because it creates a glut responsible for the decline in market price of the agricultural product, and it kind of create a problem for peace since they're capitalizing on the rural vote. The fourth point is about the inflation. Like every European country, some essential products like food and energy saw their price increase, and one of the most tricky points for the, I would say more for the Civic Coalition is actually the social policies. Because the Peace Party won a considerable point and was in a good light because of the social policy that they have taken. For instance, they create a monthly allowance of 500 zloty, which can be 124 euros. Paid to family for each new child, and I increase it of 300 more at the beginning of January. So it's like now 198, sorry. Or for example, they also lower the retirement age. With this type of politics, so it's quite complicated for the Civic Coalition to confront the peace because they have actually similar views on it, and also because the social security system before the Peace Party came in power was not as developed as it is now. So the Civic Coalition still emphasizes and want to expand the welfare policy and the social policy, but they have to promise, for example, that they will not abandon or amend the policy that was taken under the peace regime. So another thing that impact, or we can say shapes the election, was actually the referendum on the 15th October 2003. So yeah, it's weird, a referendum for a party that is into not really democratic friendly. Actually, they're using a referendum, but no, don't worry, there is a catch, there is a problem. So it was decided on the 8th of August, the Polish President Duda decided to schedule at the same time the parliamentary election and the referendum. It includes these 4 questions. I will not read because it's too long, but the first problem, there is like multiple problems, and one of the first problems concerns, of course, the date and how it was made. Since it was made at the same day and on the same day, and it caused a problem regarding the anonymity of the votes. For example, since it's easily possible to know who voted for the election, but not for the referendum, since some in the civic coalition asked to boycott the referendum. And another problem is also that any future government cannot ignore the will of the people that voted for the referendum, because if not, they are anti-democratic. And the second problem concerns the wording, because if you look at it, it's very misleading and formulated in an ambiguous manner. And the aim here is to influence the voters. So, for example, if you think you're in favor of lowering the border defense, accepting illegal migrants, or you just want people to work longer before they retire, so you should vote for the opposition. Another problem also concerns specifically the last question, because actually it's written in a way that favors the anti-EU and anti-immigration politics of the party, of the Peace Party. And of course, it's some details are kind of omitted. For example, the Peace Party actually is against the EU pact, migration pact. EU migration pact. So one of the problems is like this pact doesn't force countries to accept relocated migrants, and it offers an exception for countries under migratory pressure, such as Poland, due to the million Ukrainian refugees in the country. And, well, for the reaction, of course, on one hand, the civic coalition was very unhappy. Some said to boycott the referendum, like Tusk, and some others asked to legally avoid legally avoid. That means voting for the election, but not voting for the referendum. But we saw that it caused actually a problem. And on the other hand, the Peace expressed this question should have been left at the appreciation of, I quote, German politicians, meaning the civic coalition led by Donald Tusk. So now we're going to make a focus on the one who is the new Prime Minister, Donald Tusk. So, first of all, who is he? So it's not the first time that Donald Tusk became a Prime Minister. Actually, he was a Prime Minister between 2007 and 2014. And during his career, he's always was always supported towards the integration of Poland in the European Union. And this favorable opinion led him to become the president of the European country in 2014, and it finished in 2017. And it's even more important because he was one of the few representatives of the East and Central Europe at a key position in the European Union. And between 2017 and 2023, he was the president of the European People's Party. So it's one of the biggest parties in the European political chessboard. And it's also the party of Ursula von der Leyen, the actual president of the European Commission. So what was his objective? He has many objectives, of course, the return of the rule of law, this idea was not only to heal the democracy in Poland, actually, but it was also very practical, because like that you can release the funds of the European Union, and especially the funds from the pandemic recovery and the cohesion funds that was blocked because of the attacks made by the Peace Party against the democracy. Another objective is having a Poland that is less isolated in the EU and rebuilding the partnerships, the relationship with European Union and also Germany. Concerning the national objective, he pledged that he will keep the welfare politics made by the peace. He also promised to respect the human rights, like the LGBTQ plus right, and also create a safer environment for Polish women, as I quote him during a speech that he made at the Sejm. He wants to develop a program so that every Polish woman feel a change in the treatment of motherhood, protection of mother, and access to legal abortion. But it was not an easy campaign, of course, for Tusk, because he suffered a lot of disinformation and attacks coming from the Peace Party. For example, the Peace Party was saying that Tusk will compromise Poland's security, national security, and economic development if he wins. And he was even accused of being a creature of Berlin and not a loyal Pole during his first mandate as a prime minister. And in a video post on the Twitter X account of the Peace Party, the prime minister Mateusz Morawiecki said that Tusk, I quote him once again, that Tusk is the greatest threat to our security, and let's not let Tusk, an envoy of the Brussels elites, demolish Poland's security. But this disinformation didn't come only from the party. There is also a problem of the use of the media during the campaign, and show another attack that was against the democracy and actually the freedom of press freedom, and the lack of pluralism in the media. Oh, sorry. Actually, in 2023, in the annual Press Freedom Index made by the Reporters Without Borders, an NGO, Poland was ranked 57th out of 186 and was one of the lowest countries in Europe. And most of the public media and group TV, and mostly the most important group TV, Telewizja Polska, that we can call TVP, became instrument of the governmental propaganda. Actually, it's a private company, an oil company called FORTHEM, that control the media, but actually this company is controlled and owned by the Polish state. And they bought 20 out of 24 of the regional press, which constitute a competition to private media. And according to another NGO, Media Freedom Rapid Response, and based on the data provided by the Polish National Broadcasting Council, 80% of the coverage made by the TVP concerns the politics, which 73% is dedicated to the peace, and the rest is split among the opposition and is always shown negatively. And it even has an impact on the political debate between the two candidates, where the question were blatantly biased in favor of the party in power, but also the question was sometimes actually more longer than the authorized 1-minute answers. And moreover, the public broadcasting is publicly funded, and the public advertisement is primarily allocated to pro-government media, so there's always an unfair competition made to the private and independent media. Now I will let the floor to my colleague, Teresa, that will talk about the outcome of the election.
So, hello also from my side. As now Jana explained us a little bit more about the very unfair condition of the electoral campaign, I'm going to show you first the results. Here we have a little, also comparison to 2019 of the election results, and we see, of course, that PiS is still the strongest party, but nevertheless it has been a huge success for the democratic opposition, being the Civic Coalition, the Third Way, and the New Left. This win was also in major part related to the high voters turnout of 74.4%, which was even considerably higher than the 1989 election results, so just after the fall of communism, leading to the Communist Party losing its power, which was only 62%. We can see a higher rise in participation in western and northern regions and in cities compared to the eastern regions and to the rural areas, which also voted predominantly for the democratic opposition. So in several urban areas, for example in Warsaw or in Gdansk, the support for the democratic opposition parties reached up to 70%, whereas in many eastern areas, support for PiS exceeded 50%. So we can see the split also in this map. And also the election brought out an extraordinary number of young voters. So in the category of voters from 18 to 29 years old, the turnout reached almost 70%, first time also exceeding the participation rate of older voters, so 60 plus, which was only 65%. But then now, of course, the more exciting question or more interesting question is what happened after those elections. And we had a rather complication time formation of government. I'm also going to show you a little timeline here. So October 15th of last year, there were the elections taking place. And then a few days later, on November 6th, there happened something which was, maybe not entirely unexpected, but still not the common way to go about things, because President Duda nominated Morawiecki as prime minister, so the candidate of the PiS party, which was the strongest party, but it was kind of obvious that they didn't have any chance to govern, because they didn't have the majority, and also no other bloc, no other party had agreed to join them for any coalition talks. Nevertheless, Morawiecki insisted that he should be given the first try in forming a government, saying that he will appeal to the center-right Agrarian Polish People's Party, which beforehand also confirmed that they were part of the Third Way, and thus being a part of the democratic opposition. So they obviously declined that offer. And at that moment also Tusk famously said, "Stop calling Mateusz, we've already got a full slate of ministers." So they were already ready to govern. But still up from that point on, Morawiecki became the leader of a caretaker government. A few days later, November 10th, the Civic Coalition, the Third Way, and the New Left signed a coalition agreement with Tusk as their candidate for a prime minister. So the opposition parties wanted to sign the agreement also before the first sitting of the Sejm, in order to show that they are really ready to govern. So it happened. The Sejm held its first session on November 13th. Then November 27th, Morawiecki was sworn in by President Duda for an unprecedented third time as a prime minister. And he had about 2 weeks to kind of get a cabinet together. But then we see on December 11th, his caretaker cabinet lost a vote of confidence in the Sejm by 190 votes to 266. And later that day, the Sejm nominated Tusk for prime minister, who was subsequently confirmed by 248 votes in favor against 201 against. Then a few days later, luckily one could say, Tusk's cabinet was sworn in. During all this time, all this process, people in Poland felt a little bit as if Polish democracy was kind of on the tipping point. So it was, not really sure that Duda, who is known to be loyal to peace, if he would be ending up swearing in Tusk and his cabinet. So luckily he did. Now I want to talk a little bit more about what happened a few days later, the so-called public media crisis on the 19th December 2023, which was also one of the government's first actions and a rather controversial event, again, that triggered the discussion on how to get rid of the peace heritage. So the background, I don't really have to say a lot about it because my colleagues already did. So under the peace, the state media was used as a propaganda tool, and there was basically no free press anymore. And so it was one of the priorities for the new governments to take again control over the public media. So what actually happened is that on December 19th, the new parliament adopted a resolution calling for the restoration of impartiality and reliability of the public media. And after the resolution, the new culture minister announced that the chairs and boards of state television, news and radio had all been removed. So they kicked out everyone basically. The problem was that, of course, with Duda as a president, Tusk's government had no hope of undoing the changes done by peace because he would, they would run into the president's veto, and they also couldn't turn to the country's top court, the Constitutional Tribunal, because they were also loyal to peace, basically. But still, the way that Tusk's government gone about purging the media, it was still led to at least a raising of eyebrows, one could say. So, of course, especially from the side of the peace loyalists, they staged a protest outside the headquarters of the TVP. Also with Kaczynski saying there's no democracy without media pluralism or strong anti-government media, and in Poland these are the public media. So of course they defended the from their perspective free media. And also the public broadcasting was due to this interrupted for a few hours. So basically, really, the whole republic could see that there was something going on, which also led to it becoming just a very big event. Also, Duda obviously disagreed to the changes that has been done, but also civil society groups and independent media were expressing their concerns. So here, for example, I got two quotes. One saying, like, there's obviously no doubt that the public media need urgent and thorough reforms. However, we cannot overlook the fact that the way changes in public media have been initiated raises serious legal questions. And also it looks like a continuation of peace modus operandi, of executive decisionism at the blurry borders of legality, and that's actually what they didn't want to do, like just continue the way that peace went about things. So that opens the question not only concerning public media, but also the judiciary, of course. how can unconstitutional reforms made by peace be overturned now by constitutional means by the government of Tusk. And concerning this, Chris will say a little bit more.
Thank you very much. Now I'm presenting the last part of this presentation. I try to be as fast as possible. But first,
don't worry. We can just eat faster. Don't worry.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk about the development of Polish democracy. So what I have shown here is the Freedom House rating of Poland. So Freedom House is one of the common democracy measurements, and I've looked at the Freedom in the World Index as well as the Nations in Transit Index. Maybe to begin with the Freedom in the World Index. So we can observe from 2017, where the score was 89 out of 100, constant decline up to 2024 to only 80 points, so 9 points within 8 years, which is quite a lot, especially for a European democracy. And putting maybe the 80 points into context, as a comparison, Norway has 98 points, Germany 93, France 89, and within the European Union only Bulgaria and Hungary have a lower score. So this is the state of democracy according to this Freedom in the World Index. Then there is an even more ambitious democracy index, I would call it, by Freedom House, so with a more ambitious concept of democracy, so stressing even more factors such as independent media and judicial framework. And here we can see that 2017 Poland was on 74 points, 2024 on 57 points, so a decrease of 17 points within 8 years of peace government. Similar indexes such as VDEM, Liberal Democracy Index, show similar diagnosis of democratic backsliding, and also the Transparency International Corruption Perception Index, I know it's a long word, has gone from 60 points to 54 points in also within 7 years. We can really see this democratic backsliding. The low indicators with low scores are especially rule of law, functioning of government, and electoral process. My other colleagues already presented you what has happened there, and so this describes the state of Polish democracy. So the question is, of course, now, and it is a very difficult question, how can that be changed, and how can that be changed through the Polish election 2023? So the challenges for the new government, for Donald Tusk, for the pro-European government and pro-democratic government is, of course, to restore Poland as a consolidated democracy. Maybe just coming back, so what I forgot to mention is 2017 in the Nations in Transit, Poland was still perceived as a consolidated democracy, and 57 points in 2024 meant that Poland is perceived only as a semi-consolidated democracy, so already like a decline even in the nature of democracy. And to answer this question, according to experts, Polish experts, they say that two changes are important. So first, the removal of unlawful changes within the rule of law, in particular in the following institutions: Constitutional Tribunal, Supreme Court, Supreme Administrative Court, and National Council of the Judiciary. And second, the restoration of independent judiciary control of the State Electoral Commission. Of course, to go more into detail, we don't have the time, and it would be also way too technical. But in general, it is about institutions that drifted from strong democracy protecting role towards more serving in the interest of the peace party. What is also important to mention is that there are strong civic organizations within Poland who develop policy proposals on how to restore the rule of law. I name here Lex Super Omnia and Justitia as organizations, and they are also part of an alliance for the rule of law, which was signed in 2021 by the former opposition parties who are now in power and by those organizations. So there is really a source of hope to change, to restore Poland as a consolidated democracy. So this is on the domestic issues about democracy. What is also interesting is to touch upon the foreign policy. So Poland's ambition in the European Union and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And I start here with a quote by Prime Minister Tusk. We are stronger and more sovereign when not only Poland but also the European Union is stronger and more sovereign. Maybe to start with, from all of the countries that joined the European Union in 2004, Poland is the biggest country and has also made a huge economical development, and there's also use of geographical potentials. So here I showed you the card of Europe, and you can see that Poland is really located in the center of Europe, and coming from this geographical central position, there is a very high potential with now a pro-European approach to become a Central Eastern European power. And this also leads me to the second point, which is quite important. So the strong cooperation within the Weimar Triangle. So the Weimar Triangle is the very close collaboration between Poland, Germany, and France. And in fact, the foreign ministers have met in February. The President Emmanuel Macron, Chancellor Olaf Scholz, and the Prime Minister Donald Tusk have met in March. So there's really a revival of this format, and this in line, or this is with that they all share together a common outlook on the development of EU and of NATO is quite a potential. Also from an intergovernmentalist perspective, that Poland can influence the agenda setting as well as decision procedures, and this in combination also with Poland's 2025 EU Council presidency, and also the third point, the emphasis on security and defense policy. So as we all know, due to the Russian attack on Ukraine, security and defense policy has become very, very central. Now one of the main policy fields, it is very much in the focus. And talking about the NATO, Tusk emphasized that Poland wants to rebuild and expand Poland's role when it comes to the security policy. So this is the foreign policy, and the foreign policy is also, the link is quite interesting to the bilateral relations. And of course it is not possible to do a full discourse and framing analysis, but still it is interesting to look on how the approach has changed, looking from the former Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki from the Peace Party and the current Prime Minister Donald Tusk. And I've looked here at the relations to Germany, France, and Norway. Maybe to start with Germany. So Morawiecki, as we already heard, as you already have heard from my colleagues, the peace has a very anti-German, has used a very anti-German rhetoric, and Morawiecki had no real interest in keeping good relations to Germany. So he said that Germany is responsible for causing damage. So this quote was in the context of Germany having too deep relations with Russia, and Donald Tusk has a different approach. So he also sees that Poland and Germany may have sometimes some challenging views, but in the end, Germany and Poland are friends, and they have to overcome challenges together. So you can already see this kind of change from a more confrontative style of communication to a really collaborative approach. With France, similar situation. So Morawiecki and Macron had really not a good relation to each other. So they both criticized themselves or the other one. Morawiecki criticized mainly Macron's vision on Europe. And Tusk, at his first visit in Paris, and Macron spoke about the Polish-French friendship, and they even want to prepare a new friendship treaty. So Poland and France have a friendship treaty from 1991, and they want to update it to further collaborate in various policies. And coming to Norway, Morawiecki criticized that Norway profits a lot from oil and gas sales due to Russia's attack on Ukraine. And of course, Norway was also not amused by this. And yeah, as you can imagine. And Tusk has directly said Norway is a very important partner for Poland, and they want to cooperate in energy and security policy. So all in all, this is what we can say like a shift in style. So peace government foreign policy was very much centered towards only looking at confronting other countries by provocation and also isolation, whereas Tusk is aiming for cooperation and collaboration. So the strategy is that through a strong European Union and through a strong NATO and combined with strong bilateral relations to several countries, that Poland's role increases as a leading state on the European continent for common European initiatives. And this already is the conclusion, the overall conclusion of our presentation. The 2023 Polish elections have not only brought a new government, but with that a huge potential for change. And what we tried to show is that the election of 2023 and that we have now a new government in Poland, this really matters. This matters for democracy, this matters for Europe. And to stop democratic backsliding, Tusk and his government have the different challenge to reform the political and legal system, to strengthen democratic institutions. We know that this is quite difficult, but also coming from an experience that we have studied in Poland and experienced the country, we believe that it is possible because we, of course, now focused a lot on political institutions, political systems, so the classical political science approach, but we know also that there is a strong civil society and also a young generation which is pro-European and fights for democracy. So thank you very much. Those are our sources.
Thank you so much. That was super interesting. I'm a big fan of Poland and have a lot of friends in Poland, and I know that they've been so worried, and it's just been such a tense situation. So I only heard the end of your analysis, but thanks very much. It must have been interesting to be students in Poland. Yeah. What made you choose Poland?
It's a trinational degree, so we
So you chose the degree, and then
we chose the degree, but we also chose the experience of experiencing Poland, Germany, and France as a experience. Yeah.
Fantastic. Very good. How did you do it learning the language?
It's hard.
It's a very hard language, isn't it?
Classes were in English.
Yeah. Thank God for that.
If there are any remarks, as I said in the beginning, especially from those people coming from Poland, feel free to tell us during the day.
Yeah, I think we're a little bit short on time now, but we've got free lunch. There's another event going on called Meet downstairs. You probably walked past it. That's why the police are here, by the way. But it's just a precaution. There's nothing bad is going to happen. And they have had a little bit of fewer people turning up, so they're generously going